We're continuing the Maimer V'Salachti B'Soichechem V'Oyisi Lochem Le'Likim, which the Rebbe said on Shabbos Parshas B'Chukoisai, Shabbos Mevorchim Sivan, in the year Tavshin Yud Aleph. In the beginning of the Maimer, the Rebbe explained that all the promises and prophecies that Hashem said in Parshas B'Chukoisai, of all the things that will happen if the Jewish people keep the Torah and listen and go in the ways of Hashem, in B'Chukoisai Teilechu, if you will walk in my statutes, which means to be toil in the study of Torah, and mitzvosai tishmeiru, you'll guard and keep my mitzvahs, then Hashem promises all types of promises and prophecies of what will happen in the physical and material world, all the blessings that will take place. Now the Rebbe explained earlier, what we learned earlier is that the Rebbe explained that these are things that didn't necessarily only mean at the time of the coming of Mashiach, and as we see clearly that there were times throughout history that the Jews kept mitzvahs properly, and that they did get the fulfillment of some of these promises. It's dependent on B'Chukoisai Teilechu. When Mashiach comes, we'll have a fulfillment in the best way of all of them. But there's one that it says in the Rishonim that will only happen in the time of Mashiach, and that is V'Salachti B'Soichechem. V'Salachti B'Soichechem means that Hashem says, I will walk amongst you. And this we say that can only happen in the time of Mashiach. And the question is, first of all, in general, why is it necessary even B'Chukoisai Teilechu, which means a strong fulfillment of the Torah and mitzvahs, in order to get this promise? We know that in general, when a person does the mitzvahs, like it says, V'olachta b'drachav, going in the ways of Hashem, that in itself should already bring V'Salachti B'Soichechem. And moreover, why do we say that this can only happen in the time of Mashiach? Specifically, this one is only possible to happen in the time of Mashiach. And so the Rebbe explains the idea of halicha. What does it mean, the word V'Salachti B'Soichechem? So first, there's something in general that's explained in Chassidus, although not in this Maimer, but in general in Chassidus there's an explanation. The word to go means to go from one place to the other. Now, if I'm only walking in accordance with what I've done up until now, that's not really going, because I didn't totally leave my place and go to a different place. I just continued on further in the same state that I was. I learned Torah, and I learn a little bit more, or a lot more, but it's all in accordance with what I've done before. The word halicha means to go in a totally unlimited fashion, in a way that's totally beyond anything that I've done up until now. That's what the word halicha means. And therefore also, im b'chukoisai teilechu, that's why the Chachamim say, shetiu amelim b'Torah, to toil in the study of Torah. It's not just a continuation of something, not just plain studying Torah, but going beyond and going beyond my limitations every day, doing something which is totally incomparable to what I've done up until now. What is the meaning of V'Salachti B'Soichechem? When Hashem says V'Salachti, I will go amongst you, it doesn't say V'Holachti. V'Holachti implies I will go. V'Hisalachti implies I will go and come back. Which means there's two going. There's a going one way and then going the other way. There's two directions. Similar also to what, as we mentioned last time, to what it says in Gemara, there's two opinions of what the meaning of V'Oilech Eschem Koimimius, that Hashem says, I will take you. Koimimius, upright, standing upright. And standing upright, one opinion in the Gemara is one floor, so to speak. In other words, one koima, one level of upright, one full level of a person, which is the full level of a person is like the size of the Heichel, 100 ames. The second opinion is like Adam Arishim 200 Amis. Now what does that mean? And so the Rebbe explains again, that means the same idea. It's 100 means going from one place to the other. 200 means both going from one place to the other and coming back. What does that mean practically? Practically, that's the idea of going from down, going upwards, and from up, coming downwards. In order to understand that, Chassidus gives a mashal, an analogy, of two people. One is standing on top of the mountain, and one is standing all the way in the bottom, in the valley that's under the mountain, that's below the mountain. In order for them to meet, there's two ways for that to happen. One way is that the person standing on top comes down, and the other way is that the person standing on the bottom goes up. Each one has advantages that the other doesn't have. Firstly, in order to go up, it's not something which is easy. It's not something which can be done just like that. Not everyone can climb a mountain. In order to climb the mountain, the person needs to have the proper clothing, the proper gear he has to be wearing. Otherwise, he won't be able to make it up. He needs to know the ways. He needs to know exactly the roads and the small pathways in order to know how to climb, or he won't manage to climb upwards. He needs to be very wise and smart and know what he's doing, and he needs to be strong. He needs to have the power to be able to go up. Whereas the person who's on top of the mountain, to come from the top of the mountain to come down is much easier. Firstly, the person who's on top knows the way. That's how he got on top. He knows where he's going. He is strong. That's why he's up there. But more than that, he doesn't need that same knowledge and that same strength in order to get down. The only thing that's needed to get down is to have the ability to go down, for the person on top to condense themselves in order to get down. On the other hand, if the one who's up, who's down on the bottom goes up, that means he's elevated himself. He's come up now. Now they meet properly. They're actually connecting. Whereas if the person who's on top comes down, the one who's down on the bottom remains where he was, and it's not a true connection. And the analogy is understood of what it means and what we're talking about with regards to Hashem connecting to the Jewish people, like the king that wants to show himself and connect himself to the people, that there's the two ways that it can happen. These two ways are actually connected to the time of Sfiras Omer, and as we learned in the previous Mamarim, that there's Pesach. Pesach, Hashem comes from up above. He comes down to take us out of Mitzrayim. How long does that take? It was in one day. Not only one day, it was one moment of the day Hashem decided to reveal himself and to come down. Yet, it didn't change us. So that it didn't take any work in order to do it, but it's not something that's lasting. Sfiras Omer is work. Sfiras Omer is 49 days, day after day, working and becoming involved with our animal soul in order to transform it. There's an interesting story. Chassidim on Lag BaOmer would fabreng between Mincha and Ma'ariv. Generally, when Chassidim would make a fabrengen, would be either before Mincha or usually was after Ma'ariv, because right before Mincha you're not allowed to sit down to a meal. Before Ma'ariv, once it comes time for Ma'ariv, for sure you're not allowed to sit down to a meal. You may forget to daven. So the fabrengen usually would take place after Ma'ariv. Lag BaOmer, and apparently both days of Lag BaOmer. Both the 32nd day of the Omer, Erev Lag BaOmer, between Mincha of Erev Lag BaOmer and Ma'ariv of the night of Lag BaOmer, and between Mincha of Lag BaOmer and Ma'ariv of the next night of the 34th of the Omer. It would fabreng specifically between Mincha and Ma'ariv. Reb Hillel Paritcher was one of the Chassidim earlier of the Alter Rebbe, and especially was a Chassid of the Mittler Rebbe and of the Tzemach Tzedek, a great big Chassid, and he explained two reasons. First of all, because according to halacha it's permitted, which means they wouldn't wash for bread, they wouldn't sit down to a proper meal, and therefore halachically it's permitted to sit down to a meal if it's not a proper meal, if it's not a washing meal, even if it's before Ma'ariv. So that's the first thing. Secondly, which means why do we even need to go into this? Why not just wait till after Ma'ariv? is because counting is not an easy job. It takes strength. We need strength, and that's why there is the need for the Farbrengen specifically before Ma'ariv in order to have the power and the strength for Sfiras Omer. Counting is refining and changing the animal soul. It's not an easy job, it's work. As we mentioned earlier, all the different things that you need to climb the mountain, which Mitzvah Hashem in the next Shurim we'll also learn more exactly what each one of them means in the Avodah, in how a person's serving Hashem. There was another story of a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. His name was a chassid of the Rebbe Rashab. His name was Rebbe Gershon. He was a Rav in the city of Par. And when he would count the Omer, he would be a whole Avodah. He would prepare himself. He would stand there thinking and contemplating before making the bracha. He would finally come to make the bracha, meticulously saying every word, articulating each word in the bracha, and then he would come to say the actual counting. He would sit and think again, and then start saying, he would repeat the words, Hayayim, Hayayim, Hayayim. Haint is, he would translate it into Yiddish, today is 37 tag. He would translate everything, and they asked him, you know the meaning of the words, you're a big rabbi. All the rest of the words of davening you don't translate. Why are you translating Sfiras Omer? And he explained, in Yiddish, my nefesh habamis, my animalistic soul, understands it better. Which means Sfiras Omer is something where one has to actually deal with the animalistic soul. It's not just something which comes. It's something which takes work of dealing with it. And only as a result can one come to the level of Shavuos. Now this the Rebbe is explaining, and which we're going to learn Be'ezras Hashem as we continue the Maimer. V'Salachti is both things together, from the bottom upwards and from up downwards, the two together. Having the two together is something which is impossible Bisman Hazeh in our time. In our time it's either or. Either it comes from above, but then it doesn't actually transform us, or we sit and work. And we work hard day after day, and it comes from below. Once we completed the Avodah, once we completed and we did everything, we worked hard. And as we'll learn more in the Maimer how that hard work is done, as a preparation, then there can come V'Salachti b'Seichechem and V'Oilecheschem Kaimimios. The going that it happens, that it all becomes together, it all becomes one. That's in the time of Mashiach, which that's also hinted at. That's also expressed by Shavuos. Eviani Amelech Hadarav, the king actually brings me into his inner chambers, and we become one, as we'll learn later. But now, in order to get there, we need to have the Avodah. And one more story in order to express that idea even better. In the Farbrengen after the Maimer, the Rebbe told a story. We can call it the story of the three Mordechais. The story was with a chassid named Reb Mordechai from the city of Haradak. He was a chassid of the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe appointed him as a mashpia in the city. His parents, who apparently were in the time of the Alter Rebbe, or maybe even beforehand, for many, many years they didn't have children until they finally got a bracha from Reb Mordechai HaTzadik, the student of the Baal Shem Tov, a great tzaddik, who told them that you'll have a son on condition that you decide to call him Mordechai, for the same name as me. Even though he was still alive, he said to call him by his name, and that's truly what happened. Now, this story of Reb Mordechai Haradaker is that at one time he heard that the Reb Mordechai of Chernobyl was coming to town, Reb Matel Chernobler. And the Rebbe says he wasn't nispal because he was a Chabadnik. It wasn't something which he needed to go and connect to this other tzaddik. He had his Rebbe. But nevertheless, as a Chabadnik, he didn't want to let such an opportunity pass by. Something like this happens, he wants to go and hear him, he wants to go and speak and see what he can hear from him. So he went to Reb Matel Chernobler, and Reb Matel was talking about the greatness of tzaddikim. We know that one of the big differences between Chagas and Chabad is that in Chagas, which means in the other Chassidus, in the other students of the Maggid, The path is tzaddik b'munasa yechaya. It's the greatness of the tzaddik, and everyone connects to the tzaddik, and as a result, the tzaddik sustains them. Whereas in Chabad, everything is about avodah, actually being involved in doing. And so, when Ramartel Chernobler was talking about the greatness of tzaddikim, he says in tzaddikim, they don't have to work. They're just on a level where they're great on their own. And Ramartchai Haradakar, he said, no, tzaddikim also have to work. Avodah, there has to be work. And he saw that Ramartel Chernobler was not happy about that. So he said, what's the big deal? Hashem also, so to speak, needs work. It says, Asher bara elikim lasais. Hashem created in order to do, which means even elikim, bara elikim, even drawing down godliness into the world, godliness coming into the world, also needs to be lasais, to work and to do in order to make it happen. And so, Ramartel Chernobler heard that. He said, fine. Which means avodah has to be now. We need avodah even for godly things, even for the spiritual things, even for coming from above downwards. Now it's about working, it's about doing. And one of the things about doing can also be learned from this Rav Mordechai Tzaddik, who said that a neshama comes down to this world for 70, 80 years just to do a favor for another Jew. And the Rebbe says someone came into me in Yechidus and he said, I don't do anything. I don't accomplish anything. And he said, the Rebbe says, he turned to the Rebbe and he said, tell me, I'll show you what I do during the day, tell me what I accomplish. And the Rebbe said, if you even help one Jew, that's already worth it. If you even did something and someone saw and that caused that a Jew is helped as a result, that's worth it. So the idea is that nowadays we need avodah, and Mitzvah will continue to talk about that.